They got to the island. They got to the fish that they thought was an island, and they got off their boat and they started making lunch. And in the Gemara, it says that they cooked and baked. Why do we need to know that? That they cooked and baked. And then Rabbi Nachman says, "Hayinu kol hatifiloth salkinin ve'olin." And Rabbi Nachman sort of answers the question already. He says, "Well, they went up and they went up." Again, but it's sort of kicking a can down the road sort of answer. He just states two other words that those processes of cooking and baking correspond to. That salek is also like sort of to disappear from this world and go into the next world, and olin is also to go up. It's sort of the same thing. Okay, so why does he need both lashonis? Everybody who prays a lot, not just prays a lot, they build the Shekhinah more. The more and more they pray, the more they build the Shekhinah. Okay, that sounds nice. And they prepare themselves to connect with Shekhinah. So now we sort of have a little bit better of an answer, although we'll need to explore what it actually means in a practical sense. It's more words, so that gives us more to dig into. So the double language of the Gemara, Rabbi Nachman answers this question by saying that there is a process of building the Shekhinah, building Hashem's palpable or at least potentially palpable presence in the world for those who are tuned in, and hopefully we get it to the point that even those who are not so tuned in also connect with Hashem's presence in the world. And also we prepare ourselves to connect with it. And that represents the double language. And by the way, this question of double language, it is a question in many places in Likutei Moharan, where he says the Chen and Cheshivus at the very beginning of the Likutei Moharan. He says we have to be mistakel on the Chachma and the Seichel Shabbat Davar, and the intelligence that's in everything. So this double language thing, and actually it's a very deep question on really the whole Torah, because nearly every pasuk, if you look at the very basic structure of the melody that we do when we read from the Sefer Torah, and even in other Sfarim, in the Megillot, in the Haftarah, and even in Tehillim, you'll see many pasukim, nearly all of them are split in half. And there is very often a sort of a double language mirror thing, where it sort of sounds like the same thing is being said twice. And that always is a worthwhile thing to go into. So here, let's look at specifically how Rabbi Nachman answers this question about the double language. That there is the building of the Shekhinah process and the connecting with the Shekhinah process. Now, that would sound easy enough to accept as an answer if it weren't for everything that we've learned so far in the Likutei Moharan Beit, wherein we talk about this process of prayer. What's the difference between our prayer and the prayer of Mashiach Tzidkenu? Is that our prayer, it sort of moves things around in the world as they are, but it doesn't really change anything in a permanent sense. And Mashiach's prayers changes things in a permanent sense. And how does he do that? Because he goes to this place called Mishpat, this divine location called Mishpat, and Mishpat is going to send is where everybody sort of derives their conscious experience from, the sort of random sample pack of emotions that they get sent at any given time, which are to some extent a reaction to their environment, but not always do people's emotions make sense given environmental factors, especially given that one can look at any situation in a number of different ways. Actually, there is a Kabbalistic answer for why we have so many seemingly double phrases in the Torah. There is a very high world before Atzilus, before even Adam Kadmon, so far as I understand, called the Olam Malbush, where it's all the letters that are going to make up. Even when we learn the regular Kisvei Arizal about these lofty levels of Adam Kadmon and the various metaphorical body parts of Adam Kadmon, these things are all represented by Hebrew letters, names of Hashem, and where do these letters come from? From the Aleph Beth. That's an easy question. Where does the Aleph Beth come from? And so it comes from this place called Olam HaMalbush, which is basically you just take the Aleph Beth and you conjugate it a bunch of different ways. Not conjugate, that's not the right word. You permute, that's the right word. You permute the Aleph Beth many different ways, and you're familiar with some of the Atbash, Albams. These are some of the more well-known ones, and some of these are classified as forward, and some of these are classified as backwards, and so the world essentially gets two hashpa'oth, two infusions of divinity that will express itself however it does in the world, whether we think it's good or bad. And it comes from these two various results, categories of permutations of the Aleph. So when we go to this world of Mishpat in the prayer, and then we go there, and as we said previously in this teaching in Likutei Moharan, that we study Halacha in a deep way, because then when we get to this place, we're going to be able to issue rulings, which will be very important, because it is the source of all human emotion, and it is overrun by goons, as I've said a few different times, and so we need to take some power in that place. We need to be very learned in order to do so. A dumb man does not become powerful. It's only someone who's smart enough to become powerful when everybody else wants to be powerful too. And they have to find some way to do that, even if they maybe even look dumb on the outside on TV or something. They have to be intelligent. So if we're going to go to this intense spiritual place with our prayer, we have to be very intelligent in that place to actually be able to positively influence someone. So we said before, sometimes some people's ideal of prayer is, well, I went to the world of Atzilus in my prayer. I went to this very high, lofty level and had a cool experience. And then my very simple question, whatever world you claim to have gone to in your prayers, would be, what did you do there? And so it seems to be that this teaching in Likutei Moharan has already given us a pretty significant way of connecting with the Shekhinah. We're actually going to a place that you could explain in Kabbalah how it's higher than what we call the Shekhinah. There are many levels of what we call the Shekhinah. But what we're describing as the Shekhinah here, when you say Shekhinah without any of the qualifiers, technically we're talking about the Malchus of Atzilus, and this world would be in at least the Yesod, at least something that includes other aspects of Atzilus. So we're sort of a little bit going above the Shekhinah. If there's an idea that Rabbi Nachman is the doctor of the Shekhinah, that's what he's teaching us to be. So if we're going to heal the Shekhinah, we have to be in a high enough place that we can actually have any influence on the Shekhinah. Right? If I go to the doctor and I don't do anything he says, it's going to be very difficult for him to heal me. So I have to go to the doctor, and the doctor has to be credentialed enough that he's like, listen, I know some things you don't know, and this is why I'm able to explain to you why you're not feeling well and why I'm able to actually do anything about it, because I just know some things you don't know, because the doctor is in a higher place than I am when I'm sick. And that's the only way that I can receive influence from the doctor. And so too, we wind up going to a location that is in some ways above the Shekhinah. There is a fairly straightforward Kabbalistic explanation why that is. And so this connecting thing that's being done here, we need to explain what this is, because it sounds like we've already done it. So we're going to look here into the Tzfat Israel about this particular word for connection, zivug. Rabbi Nachman explains that the words of cooking that were used in the story in the Gemara are related to zivug, because zivug means connection, typically in the way of married folk. Although in a simple sense, and as we're going to explain here, it doesn't seem to have much to do with marital anything. It really is just various degrees of connection that we can have with the Shekhinah. So here from Kehilas Yaakov, a book that is one of the source texts for the Eitz Chaim, the famous. That's one of the. It's like the the Bible of the Arizals, the Eitz Chaim. That's where it all comes together. There's other works that we read parallel, but that's like the main thing of you want to learn Kabbalah that all our Kabbalah is based on. That's like the core text, and it is a combination of many texts. And one of the Kehilas Yaakov. So So here we're reading here from Kehilat Yaakov. Yesh shalosh mini zivukim. There are three types of connections. One of them is for the sake of the continued existence of the world. I'm not going to explain Kabbalistically what that means really here, but I'm going to explain it in terms of the practical teachings of this Likutei Moharan. One of the things we've been grappling with is the ideas that, well, it doesn't seem like my prayers do anything. And this gives us the most basic retort for that, for nearly all categories of that complaint, that it seems like my prayers don't do anything, which is that, well, one thing your prayers do is in some way you are going to the world of Mishpat. And whatever degree of intelligence you have, which if you're able to issue prayers from your mouth in any sort of way, you have some sort of intelligence. It would be possible if not for. And so you are doing that, however aware of it you are or not. Maybe you're very aware of it, maybe not, but you are doing that. And you are improving the quality of emotions that go to people in the world. There's a famous teaching of the Rebbe of Chabad, where there's the city of Timnatha, that's what it's called. In Tanakh, appears in two places, in the story of Shimshon and the story of Yehuda, and it seems to be that, well, maybe it's at the top of the mountain or it's at the bottom of the mountain, and the Rebbe of Chabad goes through the various opinions and determines that it is at the middle of the mountain, and he teaches based on that there's no stopping, there's no neutral. Someone's going up or they're sliding down. It's like riding a bicycle up a mountain, right? You gotta keep on pedaling here. So if it were not for those praying, the quality of emotions that go to people in the world would not be as good as they are. And if you want to say, well, they're not that good, okay, but the world still exists. And if the emotions everybody got were really bad quality, I don't know that would be so. I don't know that we would have first world countries and the ability to record things on video and send them out on the internet. Humans would not be able to cooperate adequately for such a thing if the quality of the emotions that we all received were so horrible. So there is quite a bit of goodness that goes into it, and this is being maintained by all who pray. Even if you think your prayer is not doing anything. Now, this is not the ultimate end-all, because we also don't have a perfect world, and we do want that. And we're supposed to believe that can be created. It's a combination of our work and Hashem doing things and us getting Hashem to want to do things. Hashem can do anything if he wants to. So this is part of what we're doing when we're praying, and we're trying to convince him to want to. But also, we are improving the quality of the emotions that are sent to everyone, whether we know it or not. It's sort of the answer of the famous parable of the drunk who learns Torah, and he's laying there on the road, and he's not standing up, and he doesn't smell so great, and someone says to him, what good is it that you learn the Torah if this is how you should have seen me before I started learning Torah? So, whatever good that we do have here can be attributed to this very basic prayer, even if I don't think it does anything. But this is only the first level. This is the level that we discussed of most people's prayers that are not messianic in nature, which is that they shift the good around, and they move the good from those who, they move the plenty from those who would use it for harm to those who would use it for good. And now the problem is that those who would use it for harm will come and take it back. So it's not a lasting solution. It's a bit of a Band-Aid, but a Band-Aid is an important thing to have in your first aid kit. Okay, so now we're going to be presented with two other levels, and this is where we're going to have to make a chiluk in the way that we've learned this Likutei Moharan so far. Hasheni l'tosefet shefa ribui mazon. The second one is an increase of shefa. It is a new shefa, not merely moving the pieces around. The way we explained this before, this is slipping a little bit. I'm going to keep speaking. Hopefully, if I fix this, there we go. The way we explained this before is that one thing Mashiach does is he sits by Hashem's nose, metaphorically, in the language of the Zohar, and he directs the flows of influence that go into the world, the new flows, not the shefa that's already in the world that's moving around, because that's more corruptible, but the shefa that is not yet in the world, who in potential is going to receive. And Mashiach's job, in part, is to direct that to those who are going to use it for good, and we all can participate in this prayer, this modality of prayer in the ways that we've discussed in the last however many lessons we've done in this good tomorrow. And so this does bring novelty into the world. Let's talk about it in terms of emotional shefa, because that's what we've talked about a lot so far. That it's not only that we're making someone who feels bad have more reason to feel better or something like that, or someone who feels very bold about doing something bad to feel more hesitant about it as they ought to and not even consider it at all, but rather that we're sending the initial feeling before someone experiences the situation and reacts to it. We're sending them either emotional strength or not, depending on their deeds and their intentions, of how they're going to relate with that situation in advance. So this is something that is less corruptible, although it is not so new. It is a new influx of emotion that I'm already familiar with. Can I be motivated or not motivated? Okay. So this is the second type of zivug here. V'hashlishi zivug v'yichud mamash leholy nishamat chadashim alhanchil letaroth. Yeah. So the third mode is the type that will actually birth new souls, and will make new environments, new emotional environments. And these emotional environments, by the way, convert in a fairly direct conversion to physical environments, because what do people do? Well, they do what they feel like doing. Now, some people are smart enough to get themselves to feel like doing something different than what they felt like doing initially. Ashrei is someone who can do that, and especially if they want to do good in the world, because bad people have that ability too. But the new souls, new environments, well, this requires something very novel, new emotions. An emotion. I didn't know that was that emotion before. It's like, could there ever be a new color? This is a question they ask you in philosophy classes. Could you have a new color that has not existed ever previously? I think actually you can. I had a friend who he knew a lot about the emergence of colors into at least the human experience, and he made an interesting comment that when they would dig up, new colors come with the ability to dig deeper, literally physical way. When they could dig better, they would find new rocks. They could split them open, and this rock would have an element that humans had not discovered before, because it was far enough under the Earth's crust that just no human had ever laid eyes on that before. That color is new. So, with digging deep in the halachas, as we've said, becoming extremely intelligent, and then going to an extremely emotionally potent place, we can actually mine new emotions. It's like, you think gold is good. Well, wait until you find, the four-dimensional cube stuff they made in that DC Comics movie or something. That it makes energy out of thin air, right? An element that you never knew existed. So emotions too. There could be emotions you never knew existed. Before we continue in the text of the Kehilas Yaakov, which I do intend to do, because we still have to talk about what practically Rabbi Nachman is describing, or at least we're talking about what the outcome would be. Let's do a little exercise here. Imagine the actual Beit HaMikdash, not a different building that you're going to call the Beit HaMikdash in some way, not a song about the Beit HaMikdash, not a 3D goggles video of the Beit HaMikdash, as awesome as those things are. Imagine for a second, I'm going to the Beit HaMikdash. I'm actually going to pray at the Beit HaMikdash. I'm actually bringing Korban Pesach at the actual Beit HaMikdash. Whoa. Aim at the Mikdash. It's actually a motion that we have a mitzvah. I think it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, a mitzvah from the Torah to have aim at the Mikdash, to have this sense of awe of the actual Beit HaMikdash. I had this other thought about new emotions. Okay, so if we talk about the Chiyuv Mesim, we talk about the revival of the dead. Okay, it sounds amazing. it's a little hard for me to relate with because I've never actually seen someone come back from the dead. I have seen some amazing things happen, but I haven't seen graves open and people get out of them. And, okay. Now, imagine the Rambam's back. Like, okay, we don't know who's going to start with. The Rambam, that's pretty good. He's a pretty major character. I don't know, maybe Daniel or something. But I don't know, let's say the Rambam. Just be like, whatever you think. Maybe you like the Reef better. It doesn't really matter. But just imagine for a second. Oh, there's this shir. We're going to this cool shir. It's at 5 o'clock. Oh, where you going? Oh, who's the Maggid shir? Oh, the Rambam. Oh, it's a shir in Rambam? Yeah, but ask who the Maggid shir. No, actually the Rambam. The Rambam is back. He's live. He's going to give a shir. What? Wait, the Rambam is back? It's not normal, man. These are new emotions. You have to prepare because this is what's going to happen, right? At least the Beit HaMikdash, there's straightforward Gashmi pathways how that could happen. Because the Mason, I don't quite know, but these still would be new emotions, at least in our generations. I think the Techiyas Mason would probably be a new emotion, probably in all of humanity. The actual final Techiyas Mason. I'm not saying like Yochanan ben Zakkai gets out of his grave to make kiddush for his family. That's not like he's an exception to the rule. I'm talking about like the actual final event that everybody. Not only extreme special dignity of participating, but like it's starting and the Rambam is back. That's something new. Okay, so practically, what is Rabbi Nachman telling us is the difference in the prayers that are going to bring about this new level of not only sending a better influx of emotion to those who are in the world presently, but to send actual new emotions that will bring about new actions in humans, because emotions determine our actions essentially, and thereby bring about new situations. In the language of the Tzfat Israel, Neshamas chadashim lahanchil letarith, new souls and new situations, and to that they will unfold into. It will be inheritance of new surroundings, new situations. So this is it brings a Mishnah from Perkei Avot. It says, Al shalosha devarim ha'olam omed al haTorah al ha'avodah al gemilut chasadim. There's three things on which the world stands, which just basically means for our purposes are very important. We're going to unpack what these represent. One is the Torah. One is avodah. Well, let's call that the basic action of prayer. I just bring the korban, even if I don't know what it means. I just bring it. That's what the prayers are for, is because until we have the Beit HaMikdash, our prayers are the way that we do that. Al Gemilut Chasadim and good deeds, being a good guy in general. Avoda hu tzorech yuma olam. That avoda, just doing it, just the fact that you're praying at all is actually incredibly important. It's even if it's not saving the world or improving it, it is keeping it in existence, which is a prerequisite condition for being improved and most certainly completely redeemed and made perfect. My mother's low nitkayim v'shamayim v'aretz. Like it says, and he brings resolve here. I'm not sure exactly this verse. That on the karbanos, the sacrificial offerings in the Beit HaMikdash, which we accomplish these days through our prayers, this is one of the functions of prayer. It's not only based on the karbanos; it's also based on the avot of Rav Yitzchak and Yaakov, and many of the prayers are the words of David the Melech. Many of them are quotations from Tehillim, and entire chapters of Tehillim. But one of the things it represents is the karbanos, and there's a chazal that says that this is what the world is based on. If nobody brought those things or did something like bringing those things, then we wouldn't have a sky or earth. Okay, we've discussed this. Gemilut chasadim hi haziv u'gasheni letzorech shafa u'ebui mazon. As we said before, that Gemilut Chasadim, that I'm praying in a way that I'm going to go to this divine location. I'm going to make the world a better place for everybody. It's sort of the Tikkun Olam conservative reform thing here, just in a mystical way that does according to mitzvahs. That we're doing it for the sake of world betterment. It isn't necessarily for its own sake, just for connection with the Shekhinah in of itself, because in order for me to be compelled to do that, I need to have some reason. And at least if you say that there's some way I can make the world a better place by doing it, and it seems like there's some way that would actually work, which we've discussed extensively, then okay, now I have a reason to do it. We go from lo lishma to lishma, right? We do have to understand the benefit of lishma. One thing that this does is that when we do the second level of zivu gumil chasadim, when we're that's right. I'm going to pray really good here because I don't just want to keep the world in existence. I want to make it better. So I have to pray with enough intensity that I actually reach mishpah. And to actually do anything there, I have to learn. I have to learn poiskim. I have to become really, really smart at Torah, so that when I get there, I'm actually able to paskin and correct things. As the Shmuel and Breslov said, the deepest level of receiving the yoke of heaven is to ask your rabbi, how should I pray, and to take what he says, right? And that's also extremely deep. That guy has to then be able to give you a kosher answer to how should I pray. And not only just like there's something you can look up in the Shulchan Aruch. How should I pray? Well, you should think that you're in the Beit HaMikdash and that your soul is in heaven looking down. Okay, it says all that. You don't need a rabbi to tell you that. You can just go look it up yourself. But a hard question or something, should I? How much should I add-ins in Shemona Esrei? How much should I add in my own prayers? Is it okay if I feel angry during prayer? How should I channel it? These are hard questions. They're not mufurash in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so I want to have hachna'ah. I want to be humble, but okay, also I have things I feel strongly about, and I want to pray with energy. So how do I approach that? And to receive the rabbi's answer about that, the rabbi has to be extremely smart and sensitive, to be able to answer such a question as that. So this is all within the category of zivu hasheni, which is I'm praying really good in order to improve things around here. Because he writes here that by our work in the bottom that we have pity on folks that we want to give to those who don't have. In this case, we're talking about with our prayers, we're talking about emotions, the people who are emotionally not so healthy or don't react so well, that we want for them that they should have better emotions, and also people who act in a harmful way because of their emotions, that we want that they should be, their emotions should not drive them to do this, should stop them from doing that. And people who could do a lot of good but aren't, for usually emotional reasons, that they should be strengthened so that they can be motivated to do the good that they would do. This is all within the category of being mashpia l'dal, giving to someone who has not. And when we do that, then Hashem is also gomul chesed aleinu, that Hashem is going to help this essentially supernatural process with you described actually work. Right. We've talked about technical, about reductionist ways, and I do think it's important to do that. We've talked about rational ways that this could work, that by your own intense prayer with bringing intelligence into a place of intense emotionality, that you become a very emotionally intelligent person, and you influence others also, and give them mochin, so to speak. You give them emotional intelligence, really simply by interacting with you, because there's no interaction that's not emotional in some ways. And if someone thinks there is, they're just not paying attention to the emotion in this. It is an important part. It is the prime driver of nearly everything we do. So it's always there, and the more intelligent someone is about it, the more intelligence they can impart. But we see with all things that are successful that some of the things that I did were my own hand, and some of the things I did were just dumb luck. In other words, divine intervention. Right? If we believe in God, then dumb luck essentially means divine intervention. That my efforts for some reason went further than they should have based on what only I did. So that dynamic, I think, patently exists. Because we have a verse that says that Hashem he has a good eye and he gives his bread to the poor. and he says more things to reinforce this concept. By giving to those who have not, we bring about a concept of increase, that we can increase in our ability to do so. As we go to mishpat and we be intelligent in mishpat, we get more practice doing that. Torah gorim hazivug shlishi. But the learning of Torah itself, and yes, you have a kasha on this, and we're going to explore that kasha. This brings about this third dynamic, which we've said actually will bring new types of emotion, mining for emotion that nobody experienced that before. We can bring about new realities in this way. Yichud mamish, k'noda b'divrei hazor, hakadosh l'kayim v'knesset Yisrael kamei malka ela b'deraisa. The Jews don't actually stand before Hashem in a direct way, except for through the Torah. It's a famous thing that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai didn't really pray, but he was able to do with his Torah what everybody else does with their prayers, because his intelligence completely penetrated emotion. There was no emotion that he was not intelligent about. And so we can say that all of his tefillah, all of his prayer was turned into Torah. All of his emotion was infused with intelligence, at the point that it itself becomes intelligence. Right? With the verse in Mishlei that there's an advantage of light that comes from the dark, and advantage of wisdom that comes from stupidity. The advantage of intelligence that is birthed from within the foolish depths of emotion. The old Marim Rabim Ge'ele, there's other things as I were to say this. Hamorim al Zeh she'ikar yichud alyon anu gorim al yedi limud Torah. And the primary connection we make is through the learning of the Torah. So, but weren't we already learning Torah? Isn't that already step 2? So what is exactly the chiluk here? Well, okay, but we just described the learning Torah that we were doing before as is Gemilut Chasidim. That was for the sake of benefiting. It was in a way, learning to misrabe, to be the rabbi. Because the rabbi is an important thing. The world needs teachers. We have people who have questions. We've talked about this concept of paskening before, how important and really humbling it is, and how it actually changes people's lives in literal, physical ways. Who owes who money? Money is your lifeblood. Can't get around that one. Am I allowed to eat this or not? Can this person be with their wife, or do they have to be 2 weeks and then she goes to the mikvah? There are very dramatic things that can change as a result of am I allowed to leave Israel? There's very different life factors that can change in a significant way because of a Pesach in Halacha. And people will ask you this stuff, and it's intimidating, but you better be prepared. So, but that all is learning for some other thing. And because there is some other thing, and that thing is something that is in the world, how are we supposed to bring something that is not in the world in any way into the world from a basis of in the world? So when he says Torah here, I don't think it means the same thing. I think it means Torah Lishma, which essentially means I'm not trying to get smart here. I just have my Seder that I do, and I just go into the Torah, and only someone who has that sort of hekif, they're surrounded, they have the makiv and the hekif, they're surrounded, and they surround every question. When you ask them a question, there's hundreds of things they could tell you, but they tell that because when they have that body to pull from, now they really can tell you something that really is about. It's not just the last thing they read or just what they looked up in the Mishnah about it, but they've read everything about it. They just read and read and read, and just so much Torah. And this is a person who is going to dig up things that have not been seen before. Now, as this corresponds to prayer, not everyone is necessarily gonna do that. We can all do that into the ability that we can, but not everybody's going to turn up news. Maybe it's new to you, but yes, I did see that Mechilsa before. But still, if you're going to the Mechilsa in these days and you're speed reading Mechilsa, you're doing really good. Okay, so within prayer, Rabbi Nachman is talking to not only the top guys but also to the everybody else, and so this corresponds to in prayer. And one thing that we've discussed so far with regard to this concept of the island, and this strange story from Baba Bathra, where they land on this fish that they thought was an island, right? And then we said that Rabbi Nachman explains it as single darkness, that we know we need to pray, and we know we have something to pray for. We know we have a problem. But we know, at least, right? And the Maharsha explains it in Chodesh Haggadah, where he's just telling us, here's the situation. He's not attempting to cure it there. He has a different book for that, but it's not saying anything on the Maharsha. It's just the purpose of the book Chodesh Haggadah. It's just what's going on in the situation. And there he explains it in terms of double darkness. So they thought everything was good. They thought they didn't need to pray. And we've talked about other types of double darkness. They thought the prayer doesn't do anything. So this is a thing that is going to come up in prayer, because I don't always pray for shoes and shoes appear. That is not the only tachlis of prayer, and so we need to overcome that. And there's different levels of this, as outlined in the sampling of the students of Israel that we just read. That one of them is just, if I just pray anyway, even though I don't think it's going to do anything, with the idea that I know that it's doing something because of this concept that we're going to mishpat and at least keeping the world in some sort of a reasonable condition. Okay. And then the next step is, well, now because I know that, I'm going to do a really good job at it, and I'm going to incorporate my learning of the Torah into the prayer and pray with intensity so that I can reach the level that I need to reach to actually do anything. But still, all of that is sort of compensatory. It's sort of, because I didn't think, just to really prove to myself, it's very hard to remove this. I'm going to do a good job to prove to myself that it actually does something. It's very hard to get away from that ulterior motive. So breaking through that completely, and the prayer with intensity for its own sake. Right, someone who's a prize fighter doesn't only train when they have a prize fight coming up. This is their whole life. When they're not training for a hard fight, they're running 20 miles at a time, or they're lifting weights with some kind of rigor you can't probably imagine unless you're a world-class athlete yourself. They're swimming 100 laps. They're all the time. They're like this. It's the only way that someone can actually be a top guy. You can't just step in and pretend to do it, right? So. It's still rolling, but I don't know what you wanted to do. If you wanted to stop, then. Yeah.